Alrighty folks, last episode I left you, we glued in some reinforcement to the inside of these multi-floor roll shafts. Today I'm going to take you through the final steps, get this thing into a shooting arrow. So the first thing I want to do is I want to try to get this as straight as possible. You can do that several different ways. You can light your fire, kind of heat over the top of it. You can use a candle. I kind of cheat. I have a heat gun, and that's what I'm going to be using today. So I'll just kind of sight down this, and if I see any areas that need straightened, I'll heat them up and we'll straighten them. And that's kind of move it back and forth, kind of rotate the arrow shaft as I'm doing it. Don't want to get it too hot, but then I'll just kind of work it in my hands here. And as I do it, I'll sight along it. Kind of bend it on the heel of my hand there. Alright, I've got this one pretty straight. Next thing I'll do is I'll kind of sand it. The easiest way that I've found is I'll take the small end and I just chuck it up into the drill. Kind of get me a piece of sandpaper. I've got a piece of 220 grit right here. And I'll grab hold of that arrow shaft and I'll just turn the drill. You want to be sure before you do this step that you do have that reinforcement in the knock, because if not, it'll crush the knock in when you try to tighten that drill down on it. And after I take it out, I'll hit the knock in a few times. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to work at cutting a knock in these arrows. The way I do that, I have a drill bit here about the size of my string, and I'll come in about 3/4 of an inch from the knock end of the arrow and I'll drill straight through the shaft here. I about forgot one very important tip. I have this little piece of sinew. I'll chew it up and get it wet. And before I drill that knock, I want to wrap this shaft to reinforce it so it don't split out. This is deer sinew off a deer that I got. And just kind of get it all wet. And it'll stick to itself as it dries, it shrinks. And I'm going to wrap this shaft just below where I expect to drill that knock. And like I said, that'll reinforce this shaft. If you don't have sinew, you can use thread or artificial sinew. Whatever you have, just need to reinforce this shaft so it don't split out when you try to drill it. And you want to drill it slow too. So. Like I said, you want to drill it slow. Now that I've got the hole drilled, I need to cut out from the hole to the back. So what I'm going to use for this, you could use a hacksaw, whatever you have. I'm fortunate enough I have a bandsaw, so I'm going to go use my bandsaw, and I'll be back with you. Tried to show it on the other camera. I'm gonna I've got a sanding disc off an orbital sander. This is an 80 grit. You can use just a piece of regular sandpaper. I've even used emery boards for your fingernails. And I'll slide it in here, and I'll just work on this, widen this notch so I get my string through it. And you gotta go slow. You don't want to take too much out. If you do take too much out, you can always put a drop of super glue in there, or a little trick I learned from watching one of Clay Hayes' videos. You can put a little fingernail polish in there, and then once it's dry, if you need to sand it down a little bit, you can. But you just sand them out till your string will go on there. And it should snap on that little hole that's about the size of your bowstring. But this area, this here is a little bit time consuming. And just kind of work it around, get your knot fitting how you like. You don't want them fitting too tight. So just take your time and get them how you want. All right. So we're getting pretty close there. Still, I'm sure it needs opened up a little bit more. I don't have my bow out here right now, so we may leave it for now. If we need to fine tune it later, we can. One thing I like to do is I like to round my nocks off on the edges. You just take your sandpaper and knock the corners off. All right, you can see the corners are kind of knocked off now. So then the other thing I do is I'll fold this a little bit differently, and I want the end of the knock opened up just a little bit more than the throat, so it's easier to get on your string. So I'll just run this up and down at the very end of the knock, kind of like so. Even cheat it to one side. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing there. Hit one side for a little bit, then I'll hit the other side for a little bit. I don't know if you can tell, it's kind of starting to taper the edges of them knots, or edges of the knot. That way it's opened up to accept your string a little easier. Hope you can see that. And like I said, this is just a rough. We'll have to do some fine tuning later on whenever I get my bowstring out here. I'm definitely gonna have to work on this in another garage some other time, because it's hotter than heck in this garage. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I've got some just some Minwax polyurethane. This is a warm gloss. I have found that the gloss finish is a lot more durable than like the semi-gloss or the flat. So we're gonna put a couple coats on there of this, and then we'll come back after this dries and we'll fletch it up. We'll taper it for our point, and we'll be ready to shoot. So welcome back. It's the next day. For some reason my camera shut off on me while I was doing putting some sealer on this arrow. All I did was I put 2 coats of this polyurethane, but now that I've got it sealed and I've cut the length, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take some feathers. I've got these turkey feathers. These are all from the left wing. Doesn't matter if you use left wing or right wing. What matters is if you have left wings, you make sure you put all left wings on one arrow or all right wings on one arrow. It don't matter which you use, but what I like to do is I'll just grab these And I'll just kind of try to split them off the quill. And pull off pretty good here. Just take your time. I'm gonna use 4-inch. I'm gonna cut these to 4 inches. So I should be able to get 2 fletchings off this one feather. All right, now it's time to trim these. I have to go find some scissors and I'll be right back. All right, so I'm not gonna get real fancy. I got a pair of scissors. I've already cut the ends of them off. I'm just gonna kind of angle them from the back to the front. I don't want a whole lot of drag on them. And I mean, you can do this however you want. If you got a feather burner, you can use a feather burner. I'm just kind of eyeballing these. My favorite saying is we ain't building pianos, so it don't have to be exact. I could probably do a little better job, but you get the gist of it. All right, so that's kind of how it looks. Not perfect, but like I said, we ain't got nothing in it but time. So all that's left to do is I need to taper this point. I do have some Ferrotite and some glue on field tips that I'm going to try to put on here. Ought to be a good little arrow. All right, so a lot of people don't have a taper tool to taper a wooden arrow. If you got a bench top disc sander, I've got a belt / disc sander and a speed square here, and I'm gonna show you a little tip that I use on how to set up my disc sander to taper my arrows. Come on. All right, guys, so if you got a sander like this and a speed square like this, all I do is I put it up against there like so, and then you got your angle that runs down through here. I just use my pivot point here and I pivot it out until this edge of the table lines up with 15 degrees, because that's roughly what the taper is on your points. And then I just take a little spring clamp, a little 2-inch spring clamp, and I just clamp that on there. Now this is not the best setup there ever is, but it's cheap, it's fast, it's what I got. And if you take your arrow and slide it along this edge of the speed square and kind of feed it in there, and then as you start grinding your arrow, just turn the shaft and you'll taper it down. Got a little bit of a crook right here at the end. Once this point dries, we'll try to heat it up and get that out of it. She'll be ready to shoot. Alright guys, we got this little Osage recurve I made back in January. You'll find it on one of my videos if you haven't seen it already, kind of walk you through a little bit about how I made this bow. It's about 44 pounds at my draw length. We got our little wild rose shaft with homemade feather fletchings and self nocks, along with a little wrap or two of sinew for reinforcing that nock. Let's see how she shoots. Notice I made that self nock. It grabs the string just enough, but it comes off nice and easy. So you can sit there on the tree stand. You ain't got to worry about holding on to your arrow, but if it needs to come off, it comes off pretty easy. So let's see how she shoots. All right, guys, there you have it. By far, this is not a perfect arrow. You can buy a whole lot better arrow, but if I spend a little more time, got it tuned to this bow, I have no doubt that I could go out and harvest an animal with it. I hope you learned a little something. If you was here for the whole video series, great. If not, I will put the links to the other two videos on how I got to this process and got this arrow finished. I'll put them down in the description. And until then, we'll see you next time on Perry Fray's Outdoors.